This is the story of a very little boy with very big dreams. He grew up in a poor neighborhood and he loved soccer more than anything in the world. For some reason, soccer loved him too. He was the smallest in a family that played soccer night and day. Inside their house, a hallway was the field and the walls were goals. He liked soccer so much that he didn't want to go to school. He only wanted to go to the park with his ball. His mother scolded him and said he'd be in trouble if he didn't go to school. So off to school he went reluctantly, but always with a positive thought in his head. At least he could use the playground goals during recess. When he got to school, everyone always greeted him warmly. He was the smallest in the class, but he was kind and warm. From what everyone saw, he had a gift. He was the best soccer player on the playground. They all wanted to be on his team because that always meant sure victory. He was highly competitive and loved to win just as much as he hated to lose. So at times, he cheated a little at games. And if they caught him, he got angry, quit whatever he was doing, and ran off to be with the only friend who really understood him, his soccer ball. One day, when a player got hurt at his brother's practice, their grandmother had an idea. "Why don't you try him?" she said. The coach looked at the little boy and didn't much like the idea. "He's really small. He could get scared and start crying." "Just try it," said the grandmother. "And if he cries, you can substitute in someone else." Although the coach was worried about him getting hurt, he let him play. The first time he captured the ball, he dribbled right through all the players, driving all the way to the goal where he passed it to a teammate who scored!
Goal!
From then on, he never stopped playing soccer. They brought him onto the team, and before long, he was their leader. He was a natural leader, thanks to his talent and personality. Everything he did was fabulous. He was hardly bigger than the ball, but he mastered control, and no one could steal it away from him. His team always won by a mile, thanks to him. His rivals hated him and admired him at the same time. He was simply extraordinary for such a small boy. As time went on, they saw he had a physical deficiency that might cause problems in soccer when he got older. He was extremely short and was smaller than any boy his age, so one day his parents took him to the doctor.
Oh.
The doctor smiled at them. It was no big deal. With medication, he would grow. Although he would never play basketball, he'd grow to a normal height. The only problem was that he had to have daily injections of medicine. His true bravery came out that night at bedtime. Before going to sleep, he got out his medicine and gave himself an injection in each leg, all on his own. His parents suffered for their little boy. Even though he seemed strong, he was only a boy, and he must be having a hard time with this treatment. Unfortunately, this wasn't the only problem. The medications were very expensive, and his parents had used up their savings over time. They had to find someone to help pay for the treatments. Without them, their son wouldn't grow to a normal height. This was a huge worry for his parents, not because he wasn't going to be tall enough for soccer, but because this could affect his daily life. But for him, soccer and daily life were one and the same. What if they asked a soccer team to pay for the treatments, and in exchange he would play on their team? They looked to the most powerful soccer clubs, but no one wanted to take over the medical payments in exchange for his talents.
Oh.
His whole family was very worried, and so they made a huge decision. They all boarded a plane and flew to a place very far away. They had heard of a team that recruited young potentials. Maybe if the team liked how he played, they would pay his medical bills. For 2 weeks, they waited for a phone call. One day, when they were just about to fly back home, a soccer club representative called his father and said the next day a scout would come out to watch him for a few minutes. He knew that would be enough once they saw how he could play. When the family arrived, they saw that the other boys on the practice field were 2 years older than him. They were all at least a head taller and much stronger. But talent and persistence often beat out strength and size by a long shot. When the youth scout came onto the practice field, he immediately knew which boy he was supposed to be watching because the boy was super small. He was like a boy playing among men. His magical way of controlling the ball was a thrill for anyone to watch. In 5 minutes, the scout watched him perform 3 plays that won him a contract with the team and payment for all medical bills. They took him in at the youth sports complex and paid for all the treatments he needed in order to fight his illness and grow normally. His parents were happy and sad all at once. There were many expenses, and living so far from home was complicated. So his mother and brothers went back to their home country, while he and his father stayed to pursue his dream. This was painful for him. He wanted his family to be together, but his illness and his talents forced them to live separately. He felt he had to do something to give back for all they had done for him. So he decided he'd fight to be on the top team and become a great soccer player. He trained hard, continued the treatments, and slowly grew taller. At first, he wore kids' clothing, but played like one of the best adult athletes. He gained huge respect from the soccer teams he played on and dazzled anyone who saw him play. One day, the coach from the top team called him to play in a game, although he was still just a teenager. His nerves weren't shaken. He never doubted himself. In fact, he always went onto the field to have a good time. Before long, the spectators were having a good time too. He scored goals and more goals, showed impossibly fancy footwork, won games single-handedly, and his shots and performances went down in soccer history. One day he came home to find his family in his living room. Looking around, he saw his own face reflected in one of his biggest trophies. He knew with all his hard work, sacrifice, and talent, he'd become a great soccer player. He was the best. He had become the king of kings in the world of soccer.